I will be honest with you. My son looked me straight in the eye, grinned, and said loud enough for everyone at the barbecue to hear, "Dad, you'll never be half the man Winston is." For a second, all I could hear was the hiss of burgers dripping grease onto the grill. Nobody laughed. Nobody rushed to smooth it over. Winston Cole lowered the beer bottle in his hand and stared at the grass, like the answer to a very difficult question had suddenly appeared between the blades. My ex-wife, Denise, pressed her lips together. She did not say a word. Aaliyah looked from Darius to me with a confused little smile, waiting for someone to explain what was supposed to be funny. My granddaughter, Nia, stood near the picnic table with frosting on her chin and a red plastic cup in both hands. Too young to understand the insult, but old enough to feel the room change. I stood there holding a paper plate with a hamburger I had barely touched. Then I smiled. "Good." Darius frowned. "Darius." "What?" I set the plate on the patio table and reached for my truck keys. "If Winston is the better man," I said evenly, "then let him pay from now on." Aaliyah blinked. "What do you mean?" "You'll find out." I walked to my old Ford F-150 without another word. Nobody followed me. Rain started before I reached Interstate 70. It was not much at first, just enough to smear the windshield and make the wipers squeak across the glass. My left knee throbbed every time I moved from the gas pedal to the brake. The orthopedic doctor called it normal wear for a man who had spent nearly 40 years climbing attic ladders, crawling through tight spaces, and hauling furnace parts that weighed more than they had any right to. I called it earning a living. Sports radio filled the cab, but I was not listening. My mind had already wandered somewhere else, back to a February morning almost 20 years earlier. The kind of Ohio winter that makes the inside of your nose burn. I had spent 14 hours replacing rooftop heating units at a school outside Newark. By the time I drove back toward Columbus, every decent restaurant had closed. Dinner was a stale turkey sandwich from a gas station and coffee that tasted like it had been brewed during the Clinton administration. When I finally got home, Darius was already asleep. His Little League trophy sat on the kitchen counter. Denise told me he had hit a triple. "I saved you some cake," she said. I remember staring at that slice longer than I should have. I had missed another game. Not because I wanted to, because overtime paid the mortgage. Another memory followed before I could stop it. 8 years ago, the divorce papers were still sitting on my dining room table. Darius had been 25, old enough to understand that marriages sometimes fail, young enough to believe somebody had to be the villain. He came over one evening to pick up a few boxes. Before he left, I stopped him on the porch. "I do not care what happens between your mother and me," I told him. "I will always have your back." He nodded without saying much. At the time, I believed promises like that were simple. You make them. You keep them. Nobody warns you that someday keeping them might cost you your dignity. By the time I pulled into downtown Columbus, the rain had turned steady. Most men would have gone home after a day like that. I almost did. Instead, I parked outside my attorney's office. The lights were still on. Marcia Bennett had handled my divorce years earlier. Then she had helped me create something I hoped Darius would never need to think about. The Hayes Family Trust. She looked up as I stepped inside. "Leonard," she said, surprised, "you still out here moving like you're on call?" Apparently, her assistant had already gone home. The office was quiet except for the air conditioner humming overhead and rain tapping against the windows. She noticed my expression almost immediately. "What happened?" I sat down carefully, easing pressure off my knee. "My son finally told me the truth." She waited. Marcia had been practicing law too long to interrupt silence. Finally, I said, "Terminate every automatic payment." Her face did not change. She simply folded her hands. "Everything?" I nodded. "The mortgage assistance." She made a note. "The daycare." Another note. "Property taxes, medical reimbursements, home repairs, emergency repairs, all of it." Her pen stopped moving. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. "Are you certain?" I stared through the office window toward High Street. People hurried beneath umbrellas. A city bus hissed to a stop. Life kept moving. Funny how it always does, even when yours feels like it is standing still. "I've spent 4 years making sure Darius never had to worry about unexpected bills." Marcia nodded. "I know. He does not know they're coming from me. I know that too. He thinks somebody else is carrying him. Another quiet nod. Then she asked the hardest question. Is this about proving a point? I almost answered too quickly. Instead, I took a long breath. No, she waited. I'm done protecting someone from consequences he insists do not exist. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she slid one document across the desk. If you sign this today, the scheduled trust disbursements stop immediately. A few have already cleared for this month. How long before they notice? The first missed payment should become visible in about 10 days. 10 days. 4 years of invisible support ending in 10 days. I signed my name. My handwriting looked older than I remembered. Marcia gathered the paperwork into a folder, but did not file it right away. I've known you a long time, Leonard. I know. I do not think you're angry. I'm not. So what are you? I considered the question. Tired. She gave a small, understanding smile. I believe you. The rain had stopped when I walked back outside. The sidewalks glistened beneath the streetlights. I stood beside my truck for a moment before climbing in. For the first time in years, I wondered what my weekends might look like if I was not quietly solving somebody else's emergencies. Maybe I would finally repair the porch. Maybe I would go fishing with Reggie again. Maybe I would sit on my own back deck without waiting for my phone to ring because someone's water heater had failed, or daycare tuition was due, or the property taxes had landed harder than expected. The thought felt unfamiliar, almost selfish, almost peaceful. When I reached home, the porch steps creaked beneath my boots. Inside, the house was exactly as I had left it. One recliner, one coffee mug drying beside the sink, one baseball game replaying softly on television. I poured myself a cup of coffee even though it was nearly 9 at night. Old habits. I carried it onto the porch and listened to the crickets. Across town, Darius was probably finishing dessert with everyone else. Maybe they were still talking about Winston. Maybe they had already forgotten what I said. I was not sure which possibility hurt more. I looked into the darkness and reminded myself of something I had spent years teaching young technicians who worked under me. A furnace does not fail the day it stops blowing warm air. It fails long before that. You just do not notice until the house gets cold. 10 days from then, the first payment would quietly disappear. Nobody would notice. Not yet. The first week after I signed those papers was almost disappointingly quiet. Nothing happened, or at least nothing anybody could see. I still woke up at 6 every morning. I still carried coffee out to the porch before the neighborhood came alive. Mrs. Patterson across the street still walked to the corner at exactly 6:30, waving the same way she had for years. If you had looked at my life from the outside, you would have thought nothing had changed. But somewhere deep inside a stack of electronic transactions, one automatic payment simply never arrived. No phone calls, no angry texts, no emergencies. Just silence for nearly 10 days. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday afternoon. I was replacing a loose railing on my porch when my phone buzzed. Darius. For a second, I considered letting it ring. Instead, I answered. Hey. Hi, Dad. His voice sounded normal. Too normal. You busy? Depends. I just wondered if you've seen Aaliyah. I frowned. Why? She's running errands. Then she's probably running errands. A nervous laugh. Yeah. He hesitated. You ever have problems with daycare billing? I kept driving the screw into the railing. What kind of problems? They emailed Aaliyah saying this month's tuition has not been paid. They make mistakes sometimes. That's what I figured. You call them? Aaliyah's handling it. I'm sure it will get sorted out. Another pause. Yeah, probably. We hung up less than a minute later. He never asked me for money. He never mentioned the trust because he still did not know it existed. 3 days later, another payment quietly failed to arrive. This one was larger. The supplemental mortgage payment. That Friday afternoon, Aaliyah opened the mailbox. Darius. He looked up from his laptop. What? Did you miss a mortgage payment? He frowned. No. She held up the envelope. It says we're short. He stood and took the notice. I've got automatic withdrawals. So why would they send this? I do not know. Aaliyah watched him read the letter twice. You should call the bank. I will. Instead, he called Winston. I did not hear that conversation until months later. Aaliyah told me about it when she was ready to talk without shaking. She said Darius put the phone on speaker while she made dinner. Winston answered after 3 rings. Hey, son. Winston, we got some kind of mortgage notice. Oh? They're saying we're behind. That is strange. You know anything about that? A short silence. Then Winston chuckled. Probably some paperwork delay. You sure? Absolutely, I'll make a few calls. I've got a commercial closing Thursday, so give me a couple days. Darius relaxed almost immediately. Okay. Aaliyah did not. Ohio summers have a way of sneaking up on you. One week, you are opening windows at night. The next, you are sweating before breakfast. 3 weeks after the barbecue, Columbus hit 94 degrees, with humidity thick enough to chew. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Aaliyah. I almost did not answer. Not because I was angry, because I already knew why she was calling. Hi, Aaliyah. I'm sorry to bother you. You never bother me. She sounded exhausted. Our air conditioner stopped. I looked across my garage at the shelves where I kept HVAC tools for decades. Even retired, I still had enough equipment to diagnose almost anything. Normally, I would already be reaching for my tool bag. When did it quit? This morning. Fan running? Yes. Cold air? No, she sighed. It's 86 inside. I closed my eyes. Nia hated the heat. I remembered that. Did you call anyone? One company came already. They quoted $2,400. I knew the number was not outrageous. Compressors were not cheap anymore. Still, it was not money they had sitting around. Aaliyah lowered her voice. Darius said maybe you could look at it. There it was, the request I had been expecting. I rested one hand on my workbench. I'm retired. I know, I'm sorry, I just thought. I understand. She waited. So did I. Finally, she whispered, Okay. The call ended gently. No argument, no guilt. But after I set the phone down, I stood there staring at my toolbox for a long time. Every instinct I had built over 40 years told me to get in my truck, fix the unit, take care of my family. Instead, I walked into the kitchen and poured another cup of coffee. It tasted bitter. That weekend, I drove to Grove City for physical therapy. The therapist stretched my knee until it burned. You've been overcompensating for years, she said. I've been told that. Your body keeps score. Funny, I said, so do families. After therapy, I met my old Army buddy Reggie at Hoover Reservoir. We had not fished together in almost 2 years. Mostly because every weekend, I had been helping Darius with something. Fence repairs, water heaters, garage doors, clogged drains, school pickups when plans fell apart. There was always something. Reggie handed me a tackle box. Took you long enough. I've been busy. You retired almost 3 years ago. I know. He looked at me. No, he said gently. You've been available. That landed harder than he probably intended. We spent 6 quiet hours on the lake. Caught almost nothing. It did not matter. It was the most relaxed I had felt in years. The following Wednesday, I volunteered with Habitat for Humanity, mostly repairing porches and wheelchair ramps for older veterans. Nobody there cared what I had done for my own family. Nobody expected free labor because we shared a last name. One of the volunteers asked if I had recently retired. I smiled. I'm learning how. That night, my phone stayed silent. No emergency plumbing, no broken furnace, no request to babysit because someone forgot to arrange childcare. I should have slept well. Instead, I lay awake wondering about Nia. Had they fixed the air conditioner? Was she sleeping in the heat? Had I gone too far? I was not worried about Darius. He was 33 years old. He could solve problems. It was my granddaughter who haunted me. Around midnight, I almost picked up the phone, almost called, almost offered to come over, almost undid everything. Instead, I remembered the look on Darius's face at the barbecue. You'll never be half the man Winston is. The words still stung, not because they questioned my pride, because they erased 4 decades of showing up. I set the phone back on the nightstand. Sometimes love is not rescuing someone. Sometimes love is trusting they will learn to stand on their own, even when it hurts you more than it hurts them. Across town, Aaliyah sat at the kitchen table surrounded by unopened envelopes. Daycare, mortgage, utility bills, the repair estimate for the air conditioner. She arranged them into neat piles. Something about the numbers bothered her. None of it made sense anymore. She looked across the table at Darius. He was rubbing his forehead, quiet and frustrated. Finally, she asked the question neither of them had ever thought to ask before. Darius? He looked up. When things went wrong before? What do you mean? The roof. He shrugged. Yeah. The hospital after Nia was born. Okay. The plumbing, the property taxes, the daycare. She folded her hands. Who actually paid for all those things? He opened his mouth, then stopped. For the first time in years, he realized he honestly did not know. Aaliyah was the kind of woman who saved receipts, not in some obsessive way. She did not have color-coded binders for every light bulb she ever bought, but she kept grocery totals in a small notebook by the microwave. She knew when the electric bill usually hit. She could tell you how much Nia's school shoes cost without looking it up. That was part of why I liked her from the beginning. Aaliyah did not spend money to impress people. Darius had started doing that somewhere along the way. The next morning after their conversation at the kitchen table, Aaliyah called the daycare before school. She stood in the hallway outside her second-grade classroom, one hand over her other ear while children shouted somewhere near the cafeteria. Hi, this is Aaliyah Hayes, Nia Hayes' mom. She listened. Yes, we got the notice. I'm just trying to understand because I thought tuition was drafted automatically. A pause, her eyebrows pulled together. Supplemental payment? Another pause. No, I'm not upset. I just do not recognize that name. She pulled a pen from the cup beside the classroom phone and wrote it on the back of a spelling worksheet. Hayes Family Trust. That was the first time she saw it. Not the first time it had paid for something, just the first time anyone had bothered to say the name out loud. That same afternoon, Darius called Winston again. Aaliyah remembered every word because she was standing in the laundry room folding Nia's tiny t-shirts while the dryer shook against the wall. Hey, Winston, Darius said, trying to sound casual. Did you ever hear back about that mortgage thing? Winston sounded relaxed as usual. I'm still looking into it. It's been over a week. These institutions move slow. Aaliyah is asking questions. That changed the air. Even over speakerphone, Aaliyah heard Winston hesitate. What kind of questions? About payments. Bills come from everywhere these days. Daycare mentioned something called Hayes Family Trust. The dryer buzzed. Aaliyah did not move. Winston cleared his throat. That sounds like one of your father's arrangements. My father? Maybe, I do not know. Leonard was always particular about paperwork. Darius went quiet. You knew about this? I said maybe. But you've always handled the tax stuff. I helped organize it. That's different. Aaliyah folded the same little yellow shirt 3 times. Darius lowered his voice. Winston, have you been paying these bills or not? There was a long pause. Then Winston gave one of those half-laughs polished people use when they do not want to answer plainly. Darius, I have helped this family in plenty of ways. That's not what I asked. I've got a meeting. The line went dead. By Thursday, Aaliyah had the kitchen table covered. Mortgage statements, daycare invoices, old medical bills, insurance paperwork, property tax envelopes. She worked through them after Nia went to bed, her reading glasses low on her nose, a cup of cold tea beside her elbow. Darius paced behind her. This is ridiculous. Then sit down and help me. I do not even know what you're looking for. That's the problem. He stopped near the sink. Aaliyah. She did not look up. What? Why does this feel like you're accusing me? She set down the statement in her hand. I'm not accusing you. I'm asking you to look at our own finances like an adult. That one hit him. He stared at her. I work 60 hours a week. I know. I provide for this family. I know you work hard. Then why are you acting like I'm some spoiled kid? Aaliyah took off her glasses. Because last month you told your father he would never be half the man Winston is. And this month every bill we thought was handled suddenly is not handled. Darius looked away first. Outside, the air conditioner still had not been replaced. A box fan hummed in the hallway, pushing warm air from one room to another. Aaliyah picked up another statement. Look. She turned it toward him. On the mortgage ledger, every month showed their regular withdrawal. Then another smaller amount. Same date, same label. Hayes Family Trust. Darius stepped closer. That cannot be Dad. Why not? Because he would have said something. Would he? That shut him up, because even Darius knew the answer. Meanwhile, my life got quieter. Not exactly happier, quieter. I fixed 2 more boards on the porch. I replaced the rusted mailbox post I had been meaning to deal with since spring. On Saturday morning, I drove to a small diner near Westerville, where Reggie liked the biscuits and gravy, even though his doctor had warned him about both. He slid into the booth across from me and studied my face. You look better. I look the same. No, you look like a man who stopped carrying a refrigerator up the stairs. I laughed despite myself. The waitress poured coffee. Reggie waited until she left. Your boy called me. I stirred my coffee slowly. What did he want? Asked if I knew whether you had stopped helping somehow. What did you say? I have not answered yet. Reggie leaned back. Leonard, I know you do not owe him a courtroom presentation. No, but you owe yourself the truth. I looked out the window at cars passing along State Street. The truth will not make me feel better. No, he said. But lies keep charging interest. That was Reggie. He could make a fishing trip sound like a sermon if you let him. That evening, Darius finally texted me. No apology, no explanation, just one sentence. Did you stop helping somehow? I sat in my recliner with the baseball game muted and stared at the screen until it dimmed. I typed, I helped because I loved you. Deleted it. I typed, you should ask Winston. Deleted that too. Then I typed, I did not stop being your father. I stopped being your bank. I stared at that one longest. Too sharp, too satisfying, too close to what I wanted to say, which meant it probably was not what I should say. Finally, I wrote, I'm sure Winston has it covered. I hit send before I could change my mind. The reply came almost immediately. What does that mean? I did not answer. I set the phone face down on the side table and turned the sound back on. The Reds were losing somehow. That felt about right. 2 days later, Aaliyah requested copies of older mortgage records. The bank employee asked how far back. 4 years, Aaliyah said. Darius stood beside her in the branch lobby, shifting his weight like a man waiting outside the principal's office. 4 years, he whispered. Yes, Darius. This is a lot. She looked at him calmly. So were the bills. They waited 20 minutes in stiff chairs under a television playing muted news. Nia was with a neighbor. Darius kept checking his phone. Aaliyah kept her hands folded around her purse strap. When the banker finally came back, she handed Aaliyah a printed packet. There are recurring supplemental payments from an external account. Aaliyah's mouth went dry. Can you tell us whose account? The banker shook her head. Not directly, but the payment memo appears on several records. Aaliyah turned the first page. There it was again. Hayes Family Trust. Darius took the packet from her and flipped through the pages faster and faster. Every month, every year. Quiet, steady, invisible. His face changed as he read. First disbelief, then anger, then something smaller, something closer to shame. Aaliyah's voice softened. Darius. He did not answer. He just stared at the name printed again and again, like the paper had opened a door he was not ready to walk through. For the first time since that barbecue, he understood this was not a billing mistake. It was a mirror. Aaliyah came to my house on a Friday afternoon without calling first. I was on the porch when she pulled into the driveway, kneeling beside the steps with a pry bar in one hand and a box of deck screws open beside my knee. The July heat had finally eased a little, but the air still felt heavy. A cicada buzzed from the maple tree near the curb, loud enough to drown out the traffic 2 streets over. She sat in her car for a moment after turning off the engine. I could see her through the windshield, both hands on the wheel, head lowered. That was when I knew she was not there to borrow money. She was there because the truth had started knocking and nobody inside her house wanted to answer the door. I wiped my hands on a rag and stood slowly. My knee brace showed beneath the torn denim at my left leg. I usually kept it hidden, not out of pride exactly, but because people look at a brace and start talking to you like you are already halfway gone. Aaliyah stepped out holding a folder against her chest. "Hi, Mr. Hayes." "Hi, sweetheart." Her mouth trembled a little when I said that. "I'm sorry for just showing up. You do not need an appointment to come here." She glanced at the porch boards. "I can come back. If you do, these steps will still be ugly." A small laugh slipped out of her. Not much, just enough to break the stiffness between us. I opened the front door. "Come inside, it's cooler." My house was not fancy. It never had been. A brown recliner near the window. A bookshelf full of manuals, old baseball books, and framed pictures of Darius growing up. One photo of Nia at 2 years old sat on the mantel, holding a melting popsicle and grinning like she had discovered fire. Aaliyah noticed it right away. She walked over and touched the edge of the frame. "She still makes that face." "I know." She looked back at me. "You do?" I smiled. "Aaliyah, I may not talk much, but I do pay attention." That landed between us, heavier than I meant it to. She lowered her eyes. "I think we've missed a lot." I nodded toward the kitchen table. "Sit down." She did. I poured 2 glasses of iced tea, mostly to give my hands something ordinary to do. When I set hers down, she still had both palms pressed flat against the folder she had brought. "Did Darius come with you?" "No." "Does he know you're here?" She shook her head. "He thinks I'm at Target." "That's a dangerous place to be on a teacher's paycheck." She smiled faintly. Then she took a breath. "Mr. Hayes, I need to ask you something." I sat across from her. "All right." She opened her folder and pulled out photocopies from the bank. The label was circled in blue pen. Hayes Family Trust. "Is this you?" For years, I had imagined that question coming with anger. Maybe accusation. Maybe Darius slamming papers onto my table, demanding to know why I had made him look foolish. But Aaliyah asked quietly, like someone afraid the answer might hurt more than the confusion. "Yes," I said. She stared at me. "All of it. Most of it." "What does most mean?" I stood and went to the small cabinet beside my desk. Second drawer, left side. A man can hide the truth from people, but he usually still knows exactly where he put it. I took out a thin manila folder and a black USB drive. When I returned to the table, Aaliyah's face had gone pale. "I did not bring this out to shame anybody," I said. "Then why did you keep it?" "Because someday I thought I might need to prove I was not crazy." She looked down. I slid the folder toward her. Inside were copies of payments, mortgage supplements, daycare tuition, property taxes, emergency plumbing after the downstairs bathroom flooded, a roof repair from the spring storm 2 years earlier, several invoices from my old company all marked the same way, paid internal account. Aaliyah turned each page slowly. She did not cry at first. That came later. At first, she just looked stunned, like her mind was refusing to let the numbers become real. "This was $4,000, she whispered. "The roof. Darius said Winston helped with that." "I know." Her eyes lifted. "You knew he said that?" "I suspected." "Why didn't you correct him?" I looked toward the window. Outside, a squirrel ran along the fence rail. "At first, because it did not matter. The roof got fixed. Nia stayed dry. That was enough. And later?" I rubbed my thumb along a nick in the table. "Later, I guess I got used to being invisible." Aaliyah pressed her lips together. Then she turned another page. The color drained from her face. "Oh my God." I did not have to look. I knew which one it was. Riverside Methodist Hospital, emergency C-section, complications, 2 nights in recovery, a bill that had scared Darius so badly he stopped answering calls from unknown numbers. Aaliyah put one hand over her mouth. "You paid this." "The trust paid it." "Mr. Hayes." I looked at her then. I was not paying because I wanted credit. I was paying because I love my granddaughter. Her shoulders folded inward. For a moment, she looked younger than 31, like one of her own students trying not to cry in front of the class. "I thanked Winston," she said. Her voice broke on his name. "I made him dinner. I hugged him. I told him I did not know what we would do without him." I did not answer. Not. There are some humiliations a person has to set down themselves. Aaliyah wiped her cheek hard. Did Denise know? No. Did Winston? He knew enough not to ask too many questions. She gave a bitter little laugh. That sounds like him. I pushed the USB drive closer. Digital copies are on there. Payment history, attorney letters, receipts. Nothing edited. Nothing dramatic. She stared at it. Why are you giving this to me? Because you asked the right question. She looked confused. What question? You asked who actually paid, not who looked generous. That was when she finally cried. Not loudly, no scene. Just tears sliding down her face while she sat at my kitchen table with 4 years of my quiet life spread out between us. I wanted to comfort her. I also knew I had to let her feel it, so I stayed still. That evening, Darius called his accountant. He did it from the driver's seat of his SUV in the grocery store parking lot because Aaliyah had come home with the USB drive and placed it on the counter without saying a word. At first, he did not believe her. Then he did not believe the documents. Then he said, I need to talk to Jerome. Jerome Allen had handled their taxes for years, recommended by Winston. Naturally. Darius called him 3 times before Jerome picked up. I never heard the call directly, but Darius told me later. His voice shook when he repeated it. Jerome, he said, I need to know what the Hayes Family Trust is. There was a pause. Then Jerome sighed. That's your father's trust. My father's? Yes. How long has it been paying things for us? Another pause. Darius, you really need to ask your father. How long? Several years. Darius sat there gripping the steering wheel. People walked past with carts full of groceries. A teenage employee gathered stray carts near the entrance. The world kept doing ordinary things while his version of it came apart. Did Winston know? Jerome hesitated too long. That was answer enough. Darius ended the call. For a while, he just sat in the dimming light with both hands on the wheel. Then he bent forward until his forehead touched the top of it. And for the first time in years, my son cried alone, where nobody could thank the wrong man for it. The invitation for Nia's 5th birthday arrived 3 days later. Aaliyah texted me instead of calling. Nia would really like you to come. 3-1 Saturday. Just family. Nothing more. No apology. No explanation. Just an invitation. I looked at the message for a long time before replying, I'll be there. Saturday afternoon could not have been more Ohio if it tried. Blue sky, a few lazy clouds, kids riding bicycles down the street, someone 2 houses over mowing a lawn that probably did not need mowing. I parked my old F-150 at the curb and sat there for a moment with the engine off. For years, I had walked into family gatherings wondering what needed fixing, a leaking faucet, a broken fence, some unexpected bill. This was the first time I had shown up with nothing to repair, just a birthday present wrapped in yellow paper. Nia spotted me through the front window before I reached the porch. Grandpa! She threw the front door open and ran into my arms. Careful with my knee. Always careful, she said. She had somehow learned that without anyone teaching her. You came? I would not miss your birthday. She leaned close and whispered, Mom made chocolate cake. Then I'm definitely glad I came. She giggled and pulled me inside. The house looked different, not physically, emotionally. The television was off. No music played. Conversation stayed low. Denise greeted me first. Hi, Leonard. Hi. She looked like she wanted to say something else. Instead, she stepped aside. Winston stood near the kitchen island wearing a pressed golf shirt and holding a glass of iced tea. He smiled politely. Leonard. Winston. Neither of us offered a handshake. Neither of us needed one. Darius appeared from the hallway carrying a tray of paper plates. Our eyes met. For the first time in months, he looked away first. The party itself felt surprisingly normal. Nia opened presents. Children from Aaliyah's sister's side chased balloons around the backyard. People talked about baseball, rising grocery prices, and whether Ohio State would finally give folks a season they could brag about without sounding delusional. For almost an hour, nobody mentioned money. I almost believed they would not. Then Winston stood and lightly tapped his glass with a spoon. If I could have everyone's attention. Conversations faded. He smiled the way successful brokers always seem to smile, comfortable, confident. I just wanted to say how proud I am of this family. Denise smiled at him. Alia did not. Winston continued. We've all made sacrifices over the years. He lifted his glass. And that is what family does. I saw Alia slowly stand from her chair. She walked into the living room without interrupting him. Nobody noticed except me. Winston kept talking. When people love each other, the television turned on behind him. Every head turned. Aaliyah stood beside it, holding her laptop. She plugged in one cable, then another. The screen changed. No photos, no birthday slideshow. Just a scanned document, mortgage statement, supplemental payment received. Hayes Family Trust. Silence spread through the room. Aaliyah clicked again. Hospital invoice paid in full. Hayes Family Trust. Another click. Property tax payment. Another. Emergency plumbing. Another. Roof replacement. Another. HVAC repair. Every receipt, every invoice, every payment. 4 years. One after another. Nobody spoke. The only sound came from the ceiling fan. Winston slowly lowered his glass. Denise stared at the television. What? She whispered. Aaliyah finally looked at everyone. I've spent 3 days verifying every document. She clicked once more. The final page appeared. Attorney correspondence. Termination of trust payments. Dated the Monday after the barbecue. Exactly 2 days after Darius told his father he was not half the man Winston was. The room became painfully still. Winston cleared his throat. I think... He glanced toward the television. There's been some misunderstanding. Aaliyah looked directly at him. Then explain it. I never claimed these were my payments. No, she said. Her voice stayed calm. You never corrected anyone either. Winston shifted his weight. I assumed everybody understood. Darius finally spoke. I didn't. Neither did Denise. Winston spread his hands. I introduced you to the accountant. You handled our paperwork, Darius replied. You always said everything was under control. It usually was, but not because of you. Winston did not answer, because there was no answer that made him look better. Denise slowly sat down. She looked 20 years older than when I had arrived. I thanked you, she said. She was looking at Winston. I thanked you every Christmas. Winston opened his mouth, then closed it again. Denise turned toward me. Leonard. Her voice cracked. I thought, I know. No. Tears filled her eyes. I never asked. She covered her mouth. I never once asked where any of it came from. I shook my head gently. It's over. No, she said, wiping her face. It's not. Then Darius stood. I had seen him nervous before. Job interviews, his wedding, the day Nia was born. I had never seen him look this broken. He walked across the room until we were only a few feet apart. Everyone else disappeared. He looked like the little boy who used to wait by the front window for my truck headlights after late jobs. I'm sorry, barely louder than a whisper. I did not lose my father that day. His eyes filled. I threw him away. Nobody moved. I took a slow breath. I never stopped loving you. He nodded, crying openly now. I know. I just stopped paying to be disrespected. His shoulders shook. I deserve that. No. I placed one hand on his shoulder. You deserve the chance to become the man I always hoped you would be. He wrapped both arms around me. Not quickly, not dramatically. Just like a son who had spent weeks carrying something too heavy to keep holding. Across the room, Aaliyah quietly wiped away tears. Denise looked down at her hands. Nia did not understand everything that had happened. She only smiled because Grandpa and Daddy were hugging again. Sometimes children recognize healing before adults do. Winston picked up his car keys from the kitchen counter. Nobody stopped him. Nobody argued. Nobody asked him to stay. He paused at the front door, looked back once, then quietly walked outside. No slammed door, no speech. Just the sound of his car starting a minute later. By the time the engine faded down the street, everyone in that house understood that respect had finally found its way back home. 6 months passed faster than I expected. The first Saturday in January, I walked onto my porch with a steaming mug of coffee, just like I had every morning for years. The porch still creaked beneath my boots. The old wind chime Denise had bought decades earlier still rattled whenever a cold breeze came through. My left knee still complained before the weather changed. Some things never really leave you. Honestly, I am grateful they do not. They remind me where I have been. The biggest difference was not my house. It was not my retirement. It was not even my bank account. It was the sound of another pickup truck pulling into my driveway every Saturday morning around 8. Darius's. His truck was not nearly as fancy as the SUV he traded in. That surprised me the first time I saw it. When he climbed out carrying a cardboard tray with 2 coffees, he caught me looking. What? You sold the SUV? He shrugged. Did not need it. I thought you liked it. I liked what I thought it said about me. He handed me a coffee. Turns out it was not saying anything worth hearing. We sat on the porch in comfortable silence. That had always been one thing Darius and I shared. We never felt obligated to fill every quiet moment with conversation. After a while, he nodded toward my toolbox. Porch still giving you trouble? The porch is fine. You sure? It just likes reminding people it is older than they are. He laughed, a real laugh, one I had not heard from him in years. Selling the big house had been Aaliyah's idea. At first, Darius resisted. He thought downsizing meant admitting failure. Aaliyah saw it differently. It means we stopped pretending, she told him. They found a smaller ranch house on the west side of Columbus, 3 bedrooms instead of 5. No formal dining room, no unnecessary mortgage, no country club nearby, just a neighborhood where kids still rode bicycles until the streetlights came on. The first time I visited, Nia proudly gave me the grand tour. This is my room. I admired the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling. This is Mommy's garden. 3 raised beds sat behind the garage. And Daddy mows the lawn now. Darius said, I always mowed the lawn. Aaliyah smiled from the patio. She means without complaining. Darius raised both hands. I admit it. Everyone laughed. It was not a loud laugh. It was the kind families earn after surviving something together. Winston slowly disappeared from family gatherings. No one officially excluded him. There was no dramatic announcement, no angry group text. People said, I should have, when you were my team. Somehow that was worth more than every dollar I had ever spent. Growing older has taught me that helping the people you love is a privilege, but allowing kindness to become an expectation can quietly damage even the strongest relationships. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let the truth speak for itself.